London, 1724, 11 in the morning in the main yard of Newgate. They woke up thinking this was just another freezing Tuesday, a monotonous repetition of the misery that brought them here. When you were thrown into the worst prison in England, your mind lies to you. It tells you your greatest threat is the desperate man in front of you, the one trying to crack your skull with a loose cobblestone to steal a dry crust of bread. But that is the cruel irony of this place. They don't know yet that this is the year Jack Sheppard will expose the fragility of these very walls. Right now, the bleeding man on the ground is fighting out of blind instinct for a sliver of life he has already lost. The guards, watching in silence, exchanging silver under the gray sky, they are the true predators. They have transformed human agony into a dividend. In 1724, Newgate isn't an institution of justice. It is an extortion market where the rent for your own skin is paid in blood. If your cellmate doesn't kill you before noon, how much silver will you have hidden in your coat lining to buy the right to keep breathing until nightfall? 5 hours before the blood on the cobblestones. The first thing that wakes you in Newgate is never the memory of your crime. It is the cold, followed immediately by the suffocating smell, a physical, solid wall of ancient urine, rancid sweat, and centuries of human despair that seems baked into the porous stone itself. In 1724, hell doesn't burn, it freezes in the shadows. You are on the common side, the ward for the utterly destitute. Here, the laws of God and the crown are suspended, replaced entirely by the law of gravity, the sheer physical weight of the iron chaining you to the floor. The turnkey enters holding a warm tallow lantern that casts monstrous shadows across the peeling walls. He doesn't look at the prisoners with malice. He looks at a leather ledger. You owe the garnish, the entry fee. You owe rent for the rotten straw you slept on. You owe for the candlelight you never received. Newgate is a bureaucratic meat grinder. Your trembling fingers brush against the lining of your ruined coat, feeling the cold, hard edge of a single, hidden silver shilling. It is the only barrier between you and starvation for the next 12 hours. Welcome to the daylight of Newgate. This isn't a place of quiet reflection. It is a hyper-capitalist slum, violently compressed inside 4 stone walls. In the center sits the prison tap house, operated entirely by the turnkeys themselves. Here, the laws of the British Empire hold absolutely no jurisdiction. The only constitution is the weight of your coin purse. Before we follow him deeper into the mud and madness of this forgotten world, take a moment to subscribe and walk these brutal stones with us. You pay the garnish fee just to stand in the freezing wind. You pay the prisoner bosses for the privilege of not being beaten. Your return on investment? A piece of bread so petrified it must be soaked in dirty rainwater just to crack it with your teeth. You bought your morning ration, but in a yard where starving men watch every transaction with predatory eyes, how exactly does a single copper coin protect a man who just revealed his pockets are finally empty? In the outside world, justice is supposed to be blind, but inside Newgate, the jailer's ledger has perfect vision. This is the state side. For exorbitant weekly rents, wealthy lords, corrupt politicians, and famous highwaymen buy feather beds, imported wine, and most importantly, the easement, the permanent removal of their chains. While they sweat by the fire, believing these thick stone walls are absolute and impenetrable, the men in the yard freeze in the mud, carrying the literal weight of their poverty. The elites up there think this system is unbreakable, but history knows better. Within months, a shadow named Jack Sheppard will prove that even the king's iron can be shattered. For now, however, the illusion of control remains absolute. There is a fragile, frozen peace in the morning yard, maintained only because men are too starved and sick to riot. But beneath the surface, the tension is a coiled spring. The guards on the catwalk don't maintain order, they manage the livestock. They see the predator circling, they see the target trembling. They know exactly what is about to happen, and they are already calculating the odds. The man with the blade is a visible threat, but the true apex predator of Newgate is microscopic. They call it Typhus. It is bred in the lice of unwashed coats and the suffocating stench of human waste that coats every inch of these stones. In 1724, before a rusted blade can ever pierce your skin, the very air you breathe begins to rot your lungs from the inside out. You retreat to the margins, to the absolute filth where even the guards refuse to patrol, thinking the darkness will hide you. But in Newgate, the shadows don't protect the weak, they only trap them. As you watch this reality, ask yourself, how long would your modern lungs survive in a world where taking a deep breath is a death sentence? You tried to hide in the rot, but the rot already owns you. The fever might kill you in a week, and the freezing mud might take you by nightfall. But when the rusted iron is an inch from your throat, does tomorrow even exist? In 1724, Newgate is not a machine that is breaking down. It is a machine that has already failed, yet continues to grind. The bureaucracy of the Crown is drowning in its own ink. The keepers are so busy tallying the garnish fees and the price of shackles that they don't see the literal foundations of their power rotting beneath them. The cracks in these walls are widening, mirroring the invisible fractures in the social order of London. You think these stones are eternal, but history is whispering a warning. The man who will eventually shatter this illusion, Jack Shepherd, is already breathing the same stagnant air as you. The system is failing quietly, and the silence is the most dangerous part of all. If you expect the law to save you, you have fundamentally misunderstood where you are. The institution hasn't failed to protect you. It never intended to. It only intends to outlive you. This is the boardroom of purgatory. While the debtor's lungs fill with the metallic taste of his own blood, the men who own his time are debating the price of tallow and the cost of repairing the press yard. To the keeper, the violence outside isn't a moral failure, it is a line item. The decisions made in this room are filtered through layers of silk and silver, entirely insulated from the raw, freezing friction of the common side. They are in a state of profound denial, convinced that these walls are a permanent monument to the Crown's power. But the cracks we saw in the yard are widening here too. The shadow of Jack Shepherd is growing longer, a name that will soon represent the total collapse of this bureaucratic fortress. The keeper signs a warrant, oblivious to the fact that the ink is already drying on the era he commands. The decision-makers have already checked out. They have outsourced the violence to the turnkeys, and the turnkeys have outsourced the survival to the prisoners. When the apex of power is this disconnected from the base of the mountain, how much longer can the mountain stand before it crumbles into the esplanade? Midnight. The yard above is finally silent, and the guards are asleep in warm beds paid for with the silver you couldn't afford to keep. You survived the blade at 11 a.m., but in Newgate, victory is just another taxable event. You couldn't pay the disturbance fine to the turnkeys, so they traded your basils for the double irons. The irony of the absolute dark is that it leaves you with nothing but the weight of your own survival. You fought like an animal to keep a copper halfpenny, only to lose the very light of day. This is the house that Jack Shepherd will soon humiliate, but for you, the walls are still absolute. You survived your first 24 hours in the most brutal capitalist engine in history. But in a world where the law is a ledger and your life is a line item, survival is a debt that never stops accruing. As the sun rises on a different world tomorrow, subscribe to walk through the next forgotten era with us. We've shown you the price of a Tuesday in 1724, but before we leave you in the dark, if day one required you to crush a man's skull just to keep breathing, what exactly will you have to become to survive the next 5 months and 29 days?